And did I hear you correctly, Jane? Are you going to chair it today?
I'm supposed to. I was sent an email saying that I was to chair today, but I only have my phone to use. I can't see my email to see the agenda.
Well, we can help you out there. I've got mine. I have to switch back and forth, but we can help you out there.
Oh, wonderful.
Definitely. Yes, we can help.
Okay, good. All right, well, can we just start with a moment of silence, or do I have to say the meeting is now in order?
There you go. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. First, we'll have a moment of silence. All right, thank you. I did receive a notice from, I think, I can't remember, somebody sent me an email. It was my brother that we funeralized on yesterday, so thank you for your thoughts.
Condolences to you, Miss James. So sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry, I did not know.
Yeah, we didn't. I know I didn't know either.
Right. It's, and that's good. First on the agenda, can we have the roll call? Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Chairperson, Chair has requested an excused absence. Ms. Penn?
Present.
Ms. Dark?
Present.
Mr. Fulton should be joining us.
He's there. I see him.
You see him? Mr. Fulton?
Mr. Fulton, you're muted. Change your audio so we can hear you. He is present. I can see him.
Okay. Ms. Johnson? She's on the line? Well, she should be joining us. Mr. Scales has requested an excused absence. Ms. Williams? Should be joining us. And Ms. Wilson?
Present.
Okay. And that concludes our roll call.
All right, do we go to old business? What's next?
Next up is approval of minutes. And so I suggest, Vice Chair Penn, that everyone review the minutes if they've not already done so, because Carlin did send those out to everyone, and you can just suggest any corrections that may need to be made. Can't vote, but you can review the minutes and then share any corrections that you may have.
And Wanda, I did read it previously. There were a couple of typos that I saw, just like misspelled names and things like that. So awesome. I did communicate with Carlin earlier and sent her all of my corrections to save time. And they were just minor things.
Okay, great.
All right. Has everybody reviewed the minutes, or do you need more time?
This is Annette. The minutes that were attached to mine said October 7th. We didn't have any minutes because we didn't have a quorum last time, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, then yeah. I was absent at that meeting, so I don't have any corrections.
Okay.
If there are no corrections, do we approve the minutes?
No, just for discussion. You would just be sharing any corrections you may have or posing any questions that you may have. But until we have one more member of the committee to join, you don't yet have a quorum to vote.
Okay, and can approve.
Right.
So are there any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Not about the minutes, no.
All right. So let's move on to the next thing on the agenda.
Okay, your next item is chairperson's updates. And Ms. Dothula did not have anything with me that she would like to share with the committee. I don't know if anyone else may have any comments that she may have shared with you to share.
I just have a question.
You have a question about the chair updates? Okay.
No, not about the updates, about the website itself. I'll wait for that.
Okay, yes, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So, Ms. Jane, the next item up was committee updates.
So do we have any committee updates?
The only thing that happened with us was I actually submitted something today, and there was a question at the end of your submission form. There are two questions. I'm going to paraphrase. This material belongs to me, and you hit check. And then the second one is something like, this information belongs to me and it's not copyrighted, and you have to hit check for it to be received. So from that, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that we can only submit materials that is not copyrighted. Is that correct? And Wanda, I guess that would be a question for you.
I'm going to defer to our IS department. I know that we have a couple of people on the call from IS. I'm not sure if the system will automatically kick that back. I don't know how that would work. Ashley or Jacqueline, could you all jump in and share your thoughts?
So the form does have those check boxes, you're correct. And you have to check those boxes in order to be able to submit. So I guess from a legal point of view, if you check those boxes, you are saying, I agree with this statement. I'm saying this is true. And you can't submit without checking those boxes. Now, I guess there's always a circumstance someone could lie and check the box and that not be true. If that happens, we don't have any mechanism ourselves, to automatically know that what they're submitting is copyrighted or inappropriate. That would have to be vetted by human eyes somewhere further down the process. So we rely on the honesty of the submitter to check those boxes only if they fully agree with the statement being made. Those statements were written by our city attorney's office, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't really speak to the legality, but those were the conditions that we said we needed to have people agree to submit.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question. So for me, the problem becomes, because I was going to submit some of the photos from the Winston-Salem pictorial book, but include a more detailed description. But I can't submit those now because it's copyrighted. The book that I had was copyrighted in 1999. So there's some pictures that I will not be able to submit because of that.
Okay, and what I've done, Ms. Linda, and thank you for sharing that though, because that's important to note. I have asked our assistant city attorney if she is available to join us on this call. So if she gets the message in time and she's able to join, she may be able to shed some additional light on this. But I'm glad you brought that to everyone's attention, because that could come up over and over again as an issue. And I think you all mentioned that a while ago, that might come up as an issue.
So the problem is AAHI is going to miss out on a lot of materials because they're already, in a published book, and we're going to have to look for, our sources will have to be original, independent photos or whatever. Stories are different. It's your story, but photos, there are a lot of great pictures out there, but we won't be able to put them on the site.
That's true. Someone posed that question to me as well. And it was my understanding that on some of the articles or sites, they would say if you're not going to use it for profit, it
Right.
could be used. That was my experience.
And certainly I had planned to credit the source, but the way the word is asked, it says, you're saying you are stating this is not copyrighted material. So when you check yes, you can't use it, even if you did credit the original book. So we've got to find primary sources. We're going to miss out on several great pictures, but anyway.
I will add, just to say, ladies, that if the city attorney's office does make a different decision, and you guys make a different decision about what is acceptable, then we can certainly change the language on the form, no problem, and maybe even add a field to say, source, if that's the way you guys want to go. But again, that's a legal decision. I'll leave that up to the attorney.
If we could use such sources, they're secondary to us. But if you could have a checkbox that says, this is copyrighted and the source is, and then you check it and then you type in the source, and maybe that would be the legal protection. But yeah, if you could change that, that would be great, because then we could get those good pictures.
Yeah, Wanda, if the city attorney's office, somebody just let us know, what the decision is down the road, IS can be on standby to make those changes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Ashley.
So someone will get back with us on those two things at the bottom of the submission sheet.
Yes, ma'am, for sure.
Because I did have some questions there as well.
Okay. Did you want to raise any additional questions about the submission process or uploading?
Well, those were those two questions at the end were my only things I was concerned about, and I thought
Jane, we lost you.
Okay, I was just thinking that once we gave credit, above before the two last submission questions, I thought that would be sufficient because we didn't want to, get in trouble.
True.
So if there are no more questions about the submission forms, let's move to the next thing on our agenda.
Okay. I think we have a couple of people who are trying to join. Sorry, that's what's distracting me here. I want to make sure that they have the meeting link. And Larry, if you can hear me, I did send you a text message about, about at least one person who was trying to join. I think you might have gotten it. Hello, Councilmember Scipio. I see you're on now.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't have the link, but thank you very much. Y'all got a quorum?
No.
Oh, we're short one.
Not yet.
Who we missing? Jocelyn?
We're expecting Joycelyn Johnson, and we are expecting, who was the second person, Carlin, or was it two more?
No, that was it. Just Miss Johnson.
We weren't expecting Miss Williams?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Miss Williams. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Have we tried to call either of them?
No, we've gone ahead and Vice Chair Penn went ahead and started the meeting, so we've been on the meeting call.
Okay.
And Vice Chair Penn, you asked what the next item was on the agenda, and we're up to the director's updates.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
We are up to director's updates on the agenda. We're on item 6.
All right, director's update.
Yes, ma'am. And the first item that I had was to mention the fact that we had set up some time ago an AAHI email inbox. We'd done that some time ago. And so Jamie or Carlin, I wanted you all to share what we did receive in the inbox. I know that there were some people who were interested in joining committees, and I don't remember which committees and whether or not we can share that information so that the respective committee chairs can follow up with those persons. And if there's a way, what we might do is maybe we can just type it up real quick in the chat so that everyone can have it. Just trying to think of the easiest way to share the information. But we did receive some emails from the public about being interested in working with some of the committees. So that was more of an FYI.
Is that the same list that they sent us last week, or are there more?
That's what I'm wondering. It may be we might not have gotten any more since last week, but we're going to check on that to make certain before we say that was it. And so I think just checking that out during this meeting so you have the most current information.
Okay.
The second thing, were there any questions about the inbox and about the information that we did receive and share already?
I don't know if I got that attachment about the email inbox. So if you could resend it to me, I would appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. No problem. And also, I wanted to bring to your attention the fact that there is, well, actually, Jacqueline, would you mind sharing what you've been working on in terms of trying to get the submission process established through the website, the online process you've been working on? Because I certainly don't want to misspeak.
Sure. So the IS department's worked to develop a RFP for a digital archive. I'm sorry, I'm getting my tongue tied here. But we've worked to develop that RFP, and we've already submitted it as the first round through our finance office with Jerry Bates. So he's put his legal pieces all into it and sent it back to us, and then we approved it earlier this week and sent it back to him. So right now, the RFP is going through the process of being approved by the city manager's office and making sure that everything is in order for it to go out to the public. So I don't have a timeline as far as how long it'll take all those approvals to take effect and to start. But once that's all done, he will send that out to the public, and we'll hopefully start getting some responses to the RFP for this digital archive.
Awesome. And so can you kind of explain a little bit about what RFP means in case someone doesn't know that, and then also just a little summary of exactly what we're looking for in the RFP?
So the RFP is the request for proposal, and we send that out to vendors, and they can respond with a proposal for a solution. The proposal or the RFP that we've put out has pretty much included everything that y'all have asked for up until this point. So what we have now is a system where they submit all of their information and all of their documents. So this one would do the same thing. We want it to allow the consumers to submit information. It would go through a process where we make sure there's no malicious information in it, no malware, nothing bad. It would also go through a process where they look for curse words, nudity, inappropriate language, those kind of things. And we've asked in the RFP if there's the ability for them to check for copyrighted material. And I'm not sure if companies have that ability fully or not, but if they do, they should include that in the RFP response. So once we have all those back, we'll go through them, and the selection committee will look at
which is the best fit for our solution. And hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that.
Can I add something, Jackie? It also, in addition to the submission, the other part of what we've asked for in the RFP is also how to display a system that will display the submitted items to the public. So a website that can be gone to, that is user-friendly, that looks nice, and where people can search and view the submitted materials after they've been vetted in the process that Jackie's talking about. And that's the major thing that we're missing now, because although we have kind of a simple submission process and we're able to hold on to things, we don't currently have the software to really display in a proper and user-friendly way to the public what we are what we are getting. And so that's the other big piece of the digital archive software that we are asking for proposals for. Is that right, Jackie? I don't hope that.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear. There's two parts.
In fact, we asked for them to be able to access the information within 2 to 3 clicks from the home page, so that it's very easily accessed and in a simple format that doesn't require someone to go through multiple pages to get to a piece of information they're trying to find.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to also acknowledge that we have Mr. Tom Flynn on the call, and he is over with the Winston-Salem State University Archives. And I really wanted to have Tom on the call, of course, to hear what you all are discussing and the kinds of questions that you have, because he has certainly been an integral part of our internal planning. And so, Tom, thank you for joining us on the fly. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's no problem.
Yes. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, well, just before you came on, there was some discussion about how to handle copyrighted materials that are submitted. And I wanted to know if you have something already in place to address and handle those types of issues, because it came up from Ms. Linda that she had some items that she wanted to share, but there's an issue with the items being copyrighted. Just having that discussion about what can be submitted, what can't be, and so forth.
Yes. So we have two main things. One, if someone submits something and we know it's copywritten, can you all hear me all right? And we know it's copywritten, we try and get a release to show it if we can find the copyright holder. The other thing we have, which is a backup, is just a good takedown policy, saying that if somebody finds it and comes to us and says, hey, I own that, we take it down immediately until we can figure out, is that true? And if so, normally it's just an apology because we're not doing anything with this stuff. It's for educational purposes. But just having that and saying, we don't care whether it's true or not right off the bat, we're going to take it down immediately. And then we'll figure out what to do. And if we can't find any evidence of that ownership, we might put it back up. We've never had that. We've had someone say, hey, can you just take that down? It relates to a family member, and we took it down. It wasn't an issue. So a good takedown policy is really, in my opinion, all you need.
So, Tom, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
There's some great pictures in other sources that we're going to miss out on. Say, for instance, a college yearbook, and high school yearbook. And so not everybody's going to have that yearbook, but there might be just an excellent picture of whatever, John X, who's really pertinent to Winston-Salem history. So if we cannot submit copyrighted material, we're going to miss out on that picture. Now, IT was saying they might check into the legality of having a box that says, this does not belong to me. The main source is so-and-so yearbook from 1932. And if if that is legal, if legal says that's okay, would we be able to do that in the future? Would that be a problem for copyrighted material?
So the thing with the yearbooks, that from my experience with them, is 9 times out of 10, if you contacted the district the yearbook came from, they're probably going to give you the ability to do so, because most school districts don't have a place to house those. They recognize the value of them, and more often than not, they like being seen as a partner in whatever project it is. So yearbooks, you probably wouldn't find too much issue with. If it was like a church bulletin that had a bunch of photographs in it, you might run into the same kind of problem. I think, and this, what I'm going to say next is all based on what I remember from this project. But if the stuff is going onto a website and you're allowing for other people to then use it, I don't think just saying we don't have the copyright to this is going to be sufficient for that material. Because you're kind of setting it up so that anyone could then take it without having the ownership of it.
That answers the question. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And
you're welcome.
And we do have Keisha Redd on the call, our assistant city attorney. And Keisha, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. This, like I said, this is a continuation of a question that was asked at the beginning of the meeting about how to handle those materials, because there was mention of the fact that there are the 2 boxes at the bottom of the form when someone is submitting, and basically you're affirming that the information is not copyrighted and so forth. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts to add to what Tom said.
No, I don't have anything. I mean, I don't have anything extra or additional to add. But I mean, I think that, again, it is going to be incumbent upon whoever is reviewing, because I guess I'm just not sure that the average citizen or whomever is submitting the information is going to know the answer to that question. And so while it's great to have it up there kind of as a protection measure, I don't think that it will protect us or prevent us from having to do our due diligence to make sure. And some things we just won't know because it's a scan of an image, and so we won't have the original document there to look at to see the copyright. I mean, but if it's obvious on its face, you know, I think before publishing that, we may need to come up with a the understanding that we're putting it out there and someone else might take it and do something else with it. But again, not knowing our resource level or staff or manpower hours, I don't know if we want to open up that can of worms. But that's, you know, that's not a legal question though, but that's just one of my concerns.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Well, thank you, Keisha. So Miss Linda, you're great with that, right? Because I think you brought that up originally. And is everybody else straight with that too?
Yeah, that answers the question. As for me, I need to stay away from copyrighted material because some of them are published books. So yeah, I need to stay away from that.
So that's really.
I will say the other thing though is some of these books that you might have are probably out of print. Like we have the history of WSSU, it's out of print.
Right.
But faculty wanted to use it as a textbook. So we just called the publisher. I can't stress enough how much if you just reach out to a lot of people, an overwhelming percentage of the time, they're going to just allow you the use of maybe not the whole thing, but the images from it or some sort of summary. Just it really is, but it's time consuming. Like Keisha just said, it's man hours that are going to do that kind of work. So it's whether you want to do that or not.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Tom and Keisha. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Right now, we're still on the director's updates on the agenda. And so the next thing up was I wanted to share some information with you all about some potential grants. And so, Jamie, can you put it up on the screen? We did a little summary here. And this is also going to be shared with you via email. I know the writing is like, we're squinting to see a little bit. There you go. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much. That helps. And so you see, my staff has taken the time to summarize what the 3 grants are that have come to our attention. And so if you look, we have the grant name, the description, the criteria, and if we slide over some more, we have also the amount of potential funding and the deadlines. And so what we'll see is really when you're looking at the criteria for the grants, they are either based on trying to preserve some type of historic landmark or physical structure or edifice, or is talking about trying to preserve actual history. And so I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, wanted to give everyone a moment to kind of scan this information, just to see what your initial thoughts were, if you think it would be worthwhile for AAHI to try to pursue one or more of these grants, and what other thoughts you may have.
Ms. Wanda, I have 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any matches that we have to make with any of these grants?
That was my first question too, Councilmember Scipio. And for these 3, there are no matches required.
Woohoo! Well, then I said, let's figure out a way to get some money.
Exactly.
Let's
exactly.
go for it. You know, I can be very creative in figuring out how to match their criteria to something that we probably need, but I don't like money being left on the table. And I see the deadlines are all December the 15th. And the funding, I assume, is the next fiscal year, fiscal in July. Is that?
That is my assumption as well.
Okay.
Madam Director, could you scroll up just a little so we can see that last one, the 3rd one? Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Oh. I think, Wanda, I don't know if it's possible that in looking at these a little bit more, that we could partner with, like, say, the archive in some of their preservation efforts. If we could get the grant and pass on some of those costs, or we don't have a whole lot of brick and mortar. Oh, there is one place. The old Skyland School is not going to be Head Start anymore. But this might be something we could go out for it, to try to preserve it or to adapt it to another use, but to preserve the building itself. So that is quite possible.
And Councilwoman Scipio and Director Wanda, I do have a question along those same lines. I don't know if this is the right direction, but could we look at some of these, certainly Skyland School, yes, and certain of these other buildings that may still be here that are in a lot of danger of deterioration, such as older church buildings, et cetera. I know you can't combine church and state, but if it's a historic building, would that be a possibility?
Yes, I think so. But are we talking about, what did you have in mind, Linda?
Well, there is a state.
What building? What site?
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about some of the older churches, such as Goler Metropolitan. As you know, Goler Memorial has been sold or will be sold.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so that takes care of that, that puts that out of the realm of preservation. I don't know how old Gola Metropolitan is, and that you can help me out. But it is one of the older churches, and that is the church where Dr. King spoke. So certainly there is some historical quality there. And as with all churches, you know, it's a struggle to keep
Sure.
these old buildings up to code.
I think you're absolutely right, because we do have between Gola Metropolitan, there's also Mars Hill.
Right,
And now all of these churches originally were white churches,
right.
but they became, for the longer use has been African American. So yeah, that might be, and that church, I think it's Canaan Baptist up on Liberty. Is that Canaan Baptist? Because it's in disrepair too. Some of them are on our on the historic register, but I think, yeah, I think this might be a good way to look at that for us to try to initiate something out of the AAHI.
And the good thing about Mars Hill and Gola, they're within 2 blocks of each other.
Yes.
So they could be possibly submitted as a joint project.
Possibly. Mm-hmm.
And also, Councilmember Scipio, my thought was, I don't know how closely AAHI would need to work with planning, because I know the Historic Resources Commission falls under them. And I know that, you know, wouldn't want to encroach or anything. But I think that collaboration or partnership, you know, would be a great idea. Or they may, I don't know if they would be better suited to pursue this. I'm just not sure. But this information came to my attention through the city's grant consultant, Leslie Mazingo. And
yeah, and I'm going to be meeting with her because she knows about our project, and I really think the more grants we could go after, in whatever departments we have to collaborate with will really make a big difference. So I also put Shiloh Baptist on that list because it was the site of a lot of meetings with Miss Velma Hopkins, who led the union efforts here, and Reverend Pitts, and that's an older structure that was, to my knowledge, was always an African American building built by African Americans. So I think it would be great for us to take on the church structures, because they all need, you're right, Linda, they all need a lot of help and support to preserve them and to validate their value to the community. I think that's what we're about, is validating the value of these structures and the people who were there and the places. I love this. So I think, yes, I think we should work through this. I would recommend to the committee that they vote to work through this. I don't want to take over, but I think it's just a great opportunity.
I agree. And also, I wanted to call everyone's attention to the second grant. And if you look at the criteria for the second grant, it not only focuses on physical structures, but it also focuses on research and documentation, as well as interpretation and education. So that would be another, I'm sorry? Was somebody trying to speak? Okay. But anyway, that would be another way to look at it. If you haven't had a chance to look at that one yet, I suggest that you scan that too, to see if you would agree that that would be another good fit for AAHI.
And Councilwoman Scipio, I know your staff is limited and whatnot. I say go for all 3.
No, it's not me. It's your committee needs to say that.
Well, okay. I say we go for all 3.
Okay, because I'm old school when it comes to raising money. I say go for all 3. We got enough. We could create a place for. We've got 2 shotgun houses over in Happy Hill that the city owns, and we just haven't been able to get funds to preserve it. And I think that first one that's got a $500,000 budget is something we can really look at. I'll look more about them because we need to do something with those wonderful shots. They're actual original structures. They've been moved to a couple of sites. So, but I think, there are opportunities there for the committee. I would recommend to the committee that you say yes to pursuing all. If Ms. Wanda knows that the pursuit requires a lot of energy coming from her staff.
It could be that if we have support from, that's why I was asking about planning, it would be helpful because we, quite frankly, are not in our wheelhouse when applying for these types of grants. And so we would need some support beyond the Human Relations Department. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure it's done right and done well so that we have a fair shot at getting this grant or these grants.
And I would also add to that, Wanda, now I'm just speaking for myself individually. I don't know about everybody on the committee. I don't have a lot of grant writing experience. I have done very small grants, local grants. So unless there's somebody on our committee with a lot of grant writing experience, we would need someone who had expertise in that area. But I would certainly say, I could make a motion that our committee support this idea, but I don't know that we would have the expertise, individual members would have the expertise to actually do it.
Mm-hmm. And the department, our department does have grant writing experience, but not in this area. That's what I was really trying to emphasize, is that because we are not in the area of historic preservation and that type of thing, we would need to lean on some other resources to make sure that it's done correctly. That was my only concern. I mean, writing the grant narrative itself, we can do, but it's just making sure that content, the descriptions, and so forth are on point. That's where I could see that my staff and I would need that assistance.
So, Ms. Wanda, I think you can get it if you would just call Mr. King and say this, tell him what we really need to we want to do. And if I could help facilitate that, but I don't think it'll be a problem, except whatever their availability is right now. And the deadline is December 15th. That's the real kicker, is that we've got to really put something together fairly quickly. So probably by the end of the week, we probably need to just have another call to just start laying out what we want to go for and what the content, because those grants also require having a realistic budget, and trying to put that budget together is really the time-consuming thing when you're trying to get all of the pieces and parts together. I'm in agreement with moving forward, but we do. What's this, December the 2nd? Or is this the 3rd? This is the 2nd.
Second.
So we really have 13 days, but it's not impossible to do. It's just a matter of pulling things together. So it might be that the committee might want to have a special meeting, at least those who want to be involved in shaping those grants. We probably need to get together this week.
Okay. And the other issue, Councilmember Scipio, was there's no quorum today for the AAHI to vote on whether or not to move forward. So I am not sure if I guess we could still move forward, but they just can't vote on it. There's no way to vote on it without a quorum. And also I see our assistant city attorney sent a question in chat. She said her audio went out, and she's asking whether the proposal for AAHI, whether it's the proposal to apply for grant funds to acquire the churches that were mentioned, because city council would ultimately have to give the up or down as to acquiring private property for the purpose of historic preservation.
we would not be acquiring property. We would just be supporting the preservation of it. So again, if we're going to do that with churches, we'd have to have some dialogue with those churches too, to try to see what would be needed. I just don't know how quickly we can get all this together for a grant, but I think it's some great ideas, but it doesn't hurt to start moving forward with pulling the pieces together. So is it possible to do a vote by email?
I don't think that's a problem, Keisha, unless you know something I don't know. I don't know if you can hear us now or if you can speak to us now.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I don't think that you can have a vote outside of a meeting. So, because you're voting by, and I don't have your bylaws in front of me, but typically the bylaws have to authorize electronic voting, and I don't know if you have such. Otherwise, if it's not specific, if you aren't specifically given that authority, then you would have to have a meeting in order to vote. Now, whether that is a called meeting or it is a telephonic meeting, but it's going to have to be subject to all of the notice requirements for a public meeting.
And thank you, Keisha. And I think that with these grants, I do believe that they are offered in cycles. Like, for instance, these grants may be offered again in a number of months. So if for some reason we don't have enough time to pull it together by December the 15th, there is a possibility that opportunities will present themselves again. So that's something to keep in mind.
I was going to mention that as an alternative. If you couldn't get things together by this deadline, still a grant proposal could be created and just have it sit on the shelf. And then when you find out that there's another RFP out there, then you get together, individualize it to that one, and submit that one at a future date.
I gotta step away for another meeting, but I dropped in the chat 2 links to different grant sources. One is the LSTA, the other one is IMLS. Both of those are kind of library, museum, archive-related grant funding places. The LSTA, the requirement for you guys to get the grant money would you'd have to partner with either us or the public library or the School of the Arts because of the way the funding comes through. But we actually got one of the LSTA grants. I think it was $25,000, and that helped us digitize a huge section of our photograph collection. So we used it for equipment, and we brought in a staff member whose sole purpose was scanning and uploading photographs for the year. Those deadlines I think are in March, so it gives you a little bit more time, but it would also kind of force your hands to have a partner in some way, shape, or form. And it could just be a digitization partner, and we could get all the equipment that you guys need or something like that. But I would just say you could, by all means, look at those and then let us know if you need our name for something, then we could do that in the least. But that at least gives you kind of more time to work than next week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom, because
no problem.
That's good information. And I think that you and Ms. Linda make good points about making sure that, collaboration is at play and that there's enough lead time to have everything pulled together and to have it done thoroughly so that we can maximize our chances of getting the funding from any and all sources.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. It was good talking with you all.
Thanks, Tom, for joining us.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And piggybacking on what Linda Dark said, I know that Gola Met has a need for some preservation type efforts, and I would be glad to give you the name of the contact person there so that if there is an opportunity for grant in the future? Because I do think December 15th might be a little unrealistic, but I don't know what this person already has in place. I can share that information.
That would be awesome because, we can certainly accumulate and collect all of the information that you all share so that we're ready when the time comes. So question, who is the chair of the church subcommittee? Does anybody recall? Because I don't have the list in front of me.
Don Scales.
Okay. Mr. Scales, okay. Because hopefully he could get very involved in this too, because it sounded to me like you all were really wanting to focus on church preservation, because it would probably be helpful to have one or two areas of focus so that it could help to narrow down some of the things that we would need to emphasize in the narrative for the grant applications. So was that correct? Was that what you all were thinking, or am I off base?
Well, I think the churches is a realistic place to start because so much of the civil rights activities were going on and the meetings were held, like the NAACP used to have their monthly meetings at Gola Met. And then, like she said, at Shiloh. So I think they are the source of where a lot of the activity took place, even from, outside of the church's regular operations.
That's true. Okay. And also what we're going to do is, because our assistant city attorney mentioned the fact that it is a very good possibility that still AAHI would need the support of council by way of a vote, because we would need the authority to apply for the grants potentially. And so that's something we need to research. Mm-hmm. That indeed is the case, because that also would affect our turnaround time. Councilor Musipio, can you speak to that? Do you know, or do we need to research it?
Well, you need to research whether or not the council needs to approve the submission of the grant.
Yes.
What I have found out in the past is that if there is an existing match that we have to budget for, that's a yes, you have to. But I don't know, for all grants, I don't think you do, if there's not a match, if there's not a budget implication. But there may be some criteria that I'm not familiar with, which then means that we would not be able to do anything for the December 15th, because our only meeting in December is going to be on Monday. So if we needed that authority, I think we just need to ask city manager, see if either of them require that we have to have the council approval to apply. I just know where I've gone after grants that required a match, even though it could have been an in-kind match, it required the approval of the council. Okay. And so that backed up the timetable by several months. So
wow,
to get on the list. So
hey, Wanda.
Yes.
Okay. What I'm thinking about when I say is that the city of Winston-Salem would actually be the grant applicant, because unlike the housing authority or the transit authority, which are independent quasi-municipal corporations that have the ability within their bylaws to contract and make contracts, to sue and be sued, and to stand as their own entity, the AAHI doesn't have that. It exists under the umbrella of the city of Winston-Salem. And so it is not its own legal entity.
Right, okay, I got you.
That's true.
So that's why I'm saying, while the AAHI can want to apply for a grant, ultimately the grant application would be in the name of the city.
That's true.
That makes sense.
That is very true.
That's true.
Okay, so yeah, I think that pretty much answers the question about the 15th deadline. I think that, we would just need to look at this as a little nudge to go ahead and start getting ducks in a row.
Right.
When the next round comes up, we'll be ready to submit right away. And in terms of Tom Flynn's suggestions for those links that he sent that were in chat, that he said the deadlines for those were in March. So that could be a focal point for the immediate future. And then we'll just stay tuned in to when the next grant cycle comes around for these 3 that I shared with you. How does that sound, everybody?
That sounds good. And what the ones that he referenced, wouldn't that possibly be, I know earlier Linda had asked about recording equipment. That might be a source of a way for us to obtain that.
That's what he said.
Yeah. So that
and it sounded like, I think he said that they were willing to partner with AAHI.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we would have to have a partner like WSSU, the library, or UNC School of the Arts. So that would help expedite things a lot, because we already have a ready and willing partner. Okay. Well, thank you, because those pretty much represent what my updates were. I know it took a little while, but I thought it was really important to share this information with you all so that you could have a feel for the kinds of opportunities that are out there for grant funding.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're more than welcome, more than welcome. So next up, Ms. Jane, were city staff updates in terms of marketing or website updates. I don't know if any city staff had anything to add beyond what we've already discussed. Anybody have anything from the city side to share for marketing or for website updates?
Wanda, I will just confirm based on our previous conversation that we're going to leave the current submission form as is with those copyright check boxes, at least for now, until you have any further discussion.
I think that's exactly right, Ashley.
Okay.
Keisha, are you fine with that, leaving the submission form as is? Because we had the 2 boxes at the bottom about copyrighted information.
Yes, because, well, let me clarify. So it's just when the person submits it to us, and it's not when we actually publish it on the website, right?
Right. Right now, there are boxes that say, I affirm basically that what I am submitting is not copyrighted. And that I don't remember what all it says, but that's what we were talking about. So basically, if the person is honest, it doesn't let you submit unless you say, this is not copyrighted.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess my question is, my memory of our last discussion was that they would submit the information, whatever it was, and that information would not automatically be published to an outside-facing website, but rather it would be held.
You're correct. That's still the way it is. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then yes. Then that's fine with the submission form the way it is. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Ashley. Any other final questions or concerns about that? Because that's where we are.
All right. So you were saying that we can submit whatever, but that we can just submit it and check those 2 boxes.
Yeah, the software itself is not going to prevent someone from being dishonest in terms of whatever they submit, but we are holding it, and we're going to have to, especially with this new software that we're putting the RFP through, we're going to have to come up with a process, and it's probably going to involve some sort of human intervention to go through that vetting process that I think was previously talked about, where we take a look at something, and if it's obviously copyrighted, reject it, or do the calling around that Tom mentioned. But right now, I mean, we're going to keep those check boxes on there, and if somebody's honest and you know that it's copyrighted, for a fact you already know as a submitter that I'm getting this out of a book, then you shouldn't submit it, because you can't honestly check the box that says, I know it's not copyrighted, because you know differently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Jacqueline, I know that we discussed having something in the RFP information, putting a little bit of the onus on whoever ends up working with us, right? To make sure that they have some kind of recommended mechanism in place to somewhat vet or capture any submissions that may be copyrighted materials, correct?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Okay.
We added it to two different sections in the RFP. So it's in the body of the RFP as well as the submission requirements.
Okay. So hopefully that'll help too.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good, Ms. Jane, on this part? Because the next section is about timetable and calendars.
Yes.
Okay. So the next section on the agenda is just meeting reminders, and you all, for your next meeting, it would is scheduled for the first Wednesday in January, which would be January the 6th.
Okay.
At 2:00.
January.
Yes, you're still on that timetable of meeting the first Wednesday of the month, unless you all want to meet on some other date for some other reason, but that's your standing first Wednesday of each month.
All right.
I know the last time we talked about, and I know we got a survey, so the responses from the majority that this is still a good time, but we still don't seem to have the participation that we need. And we have a couple of members who have not been with us, and then we lost a member. So what are we going to do to, I guess, revitalize our committee?
And I had also talked to Chairperson Barron about that. And Councilwoman Scipio, I don't know what you were thinking about it, but Dot and I were saying perhaps we need to, or maybe your office needs to identify or think about identifying maybe 2 or 3 new people. And then for those people who have missed the majority of the meetings and therefore we don't have a quorum, perhaps if your office could just contact them to see if their schedules do not now allow their participation. And so then we could, add 2 or 3 new members who would be able to attend on a more regular basis.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I have identified one person who is interested in joining the committee. The thing about joining the committee, it does have to get the mayor's approval and the council's approval. So right now, we may have someone approved for the it's the second council meeting. So we wouldn't have anything until the third Monday in January would be the earliest someone could be approved. Therefore, they wouldn't be on board until February. But what I'd like to know from you is if there are any other folks that you would highly recommend for the committee. They have to just apply through the website. There's an application for committees and boards of the city. And I will be happy to reach out. I plan to reach out to all of the committee members to see how it's going for you. There was a structure that was put in place at the very inception of this committee that speaks to everybody's on a different term, so that you'd have rotating terms on the board, on the commission, and the officers. So there's some logistics we just need to be mindful of for 2021. And then, but if you have recommendations of people, I'd love to, if you would just give me a heads up, I can call them. We could get them to apply so that we can get their names in the hopper. It's interesting work to get something started initially. So I commend all of you who have been so diligent getting through this COVID thing. We haven't really been able to pull it off the way we originally had thought. But we do need to continue moving forward, and everyone has to chip in and be motivated. We have to motivate ourselves at this. It's still a wonderful initiative. I'm certain about that. And I'm just so sad that COVID came and sort of put a little damper on us. I think somebody's put up the board membership, and so anyone who wants to continue can be reappointed. So I'm seeing that Jane Penn term expires August 2020, and Annette Wilson. But part of that, it didn't take into account COVID. That was pre-COVID. So I'm not so certain how much we have to adhere to this, or if we could get something special. But anyway, those, even though your term may have expired, you can certainly be selected for the committee.
And Councilmember Scipio, this is information that is on the website that was shared either from the mayor's office or the city clerk's office. I'm not sure which office put this,
okay,
but that was from one of those offices, because they are the ones who are supposed to designate those initial terms.
Yeah, that came with the original resolution. I remember the terms. Yeah. So,
okay, the staggered term.
But people can, staggered terms, but you can always be reselected for it if you choose. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I know we have, so what's her face's name's not on that list? Cheryl Harry's name wasn't on there, or did I just miss it?
Yeah, it was. I thought I saw it. Yeah, it was on there.
Okay, okay. So that's a definite replacement. So for those terms that, so Jane and who else? Annette. So we'll have to resubmit you for if you like to continue for that January meeting of the council. Okay. You would be submitted for or continuing for another term. And I think it's a 3-year term, but don't hold me to it.
Could you find out for us definitely so we know what we're committing to?
Yes, ma'am. I think the actual term is a 3-year term or 2-year term.
It is.
But they staggered the first group so that it could be staggered that way. So
yes, that's true. And they are 3-year terms. And as you stated, Councilmember Scipio, given COVID and all of that, I'm sure that these terms will need to be re-examined anyway.
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah. And so,
and I brought up our concern because I think we're going to miss another opportunity with Black History Month coming in February. We're not going to meet again to January, to kind of get some energy behind our committee. And that was, I mean, I don't know that we can even get that now to do something for February. But that was why I was kind of putting that out there.
We can certainly work with marketing, Ms. Annette, as much as possible to do things like press releases or anything else that can be done virtually. Perhaps if there's an idea about some type of a virtual outreach that the committee may want to do sometime during Black History Month, that might be doable, because not knowing how the pandemic is going to be and all that, don't know what the status will be in February. So I think it would be prudent to just plan for something that could be done virtually.
Okay.
So that it won't stymie anything that y'all may want to do. And so we could certainly, Frank was not able to be on the call today, Frank Elliott from marketing, but we could certainly try to work with them to explore some things that can be done based on your suggestions and ideas.
Okay, even if we could just get a new PSA out about our committee, I think that would be helpful.
I think so too. I can certainly speak with him about that.
All right.
Ms. Wanda, could you also ask Frank if we had, the thought is everything needs to be virtual, because I can tell you the viruses, unless there's a miracle that comes in and it miraculously goes away just like it appeared, and that can happen. But saying that it doesn't, if we have virtual meetings every week in February about a topic and people could call in and share their experience, can that then be recorded so that we would be able to collect information and data through, Zoom meetings are so common. But when people get together and they start talking about something, you get such rich memories. It's beyond just the individual, it becomes the group thing. And so even if we had topics each week in February that people would call in and talk about, to see if that's feasible, that we can have, or maybe we have daily talks as opposed to just each week. People can call in and chat about, there's so much about our history that even if we did a talk every day, it wouldn't be quite enough.
It still wouldn't be enough. That's so true.
That's true.
I think that given some of the other things that I've seen that have been successful in the community, if you wanted to do like a weekly webinar during Black History Month with a different topic for each week, like for instance, the local history of the Pan-Hellenic Council, something like that, 1 week. And then another week, it could be a local history on churches or something. And then another week could be a local history on schools, because that would be also complementary to the subcommittees the AAHI has.
Right.
And so maybe each week it could be something like that. And then people can be brought in from AAHI and from the community, just to maybe a 3-person panel each week to talk about whatever those particular topics are. And then the publicity can be around making sure people know that those topics are going to be occurring during the month of February, sponsored and led by AAHI.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And I think weekly is, while we have enough to talk about each month, I think weekly is more realistic. If we could come up with 4 general areas and focus on them, and if we could solicit or get, a moderator that would help energize the interaction, that would be wonderful.
I just want to make sure that we keep our purpose is to collect information from folks.
But if we could record whatever, I mean, if it's a Zoom meeting, it can be recorded.
Sure.
And so if we bring in people that have a knowledge of whatever the issue is or the history of that, I mean, even if we went back to somebody like our own committee member, Cheryl Harry, interview her to talk about the impact of the arts in Winston. I mean, I just think, and then at the same time, each time we're going to ask people to share their information with us, submit your information, or 5 minutes of each week can be dedicated to talk about what we're trying to do.
So you're thinking that by having those weekly webinars, they may be good ways to recruit people also, because it'll get the conversation going.
Exactly.
To continue and get more involved, that's when AAHI is recommended.
Right, and if we do it maybe under the theme of sharing our story or something of that nature, I know marketing can probably come up with something catchier than I ever could, but we have a story, or sharing your story, or the untold story, or something and about our history in Winston-Salem, that might generate some interest. Like you said, when you get a group of people talking, it's amazing what you can learn.
Yeah. I love the fact that we could do a general opening, say for 1 week, it'd be the Black Business District. And all of a sudden you're talking about what happened on Patterson, 6th and 7th Street on Patterson. And then we'll talk about church between 4th and 3rd Street. And one person's memory will also then trigger another. Linda can talk about what was it like, not a long, but a snippet about her grandfather's involvement as a businessman, but other people saw him differently. The experience of going to that business, you know. What was it like at Mr. Hooper's grocery store on 7th and Patterson, or Miss LeMay's beauty parlor, her beauty school? You know, if we talk, you can set stuff out there and let people share their memories and collect that, so that we're just not having people telling them what happened, but people can share what did it mean to them. And I think that's really something we should be able to put together for February.
I think one group that we could bring together,
recorded so that it's little snippets that can go on the database.
There are still a few people still living that were actually at the Martin Luther King event when he spoke in Winston. And so if you could bring them, and not all of them are GOLA members. In fact, most of them are probably outside of GOLA now, but maybe bring them together as one of those segments. And that would then relate to the fact that the reason he was brought here was for voting and the voting, as well as the organization of that union. So if those two groups could come together to plan that, because he wasn't brought here, you know, just to become, and he came to push the unionization effort. So that's another aspect of why he was here that most people may not realize.
So I think we got, Wanda, if you could share some of those ideas with marketing to see what they could pull together for us, so that at your January meeting, you will have an action plan to help with the February event.
Right, because I think it's going to be important to move quickly on this.
Yes.
You need time to get these moderators and whoever is going to lead the discussion. If you all are doing it panel style or whatever, you know, you need time to ask people and for them to calendar those things. Also, what's really standing out to me is we need to know what the topics are going to be. We need 4 topics, and we need those like right away, because that will dictate everything else that follows. Like who's going to be asked to facilitate for that particular week, who's needed to be on that. And mostly they always recommend with webinars that they not last very long, because so they usually say no more than like an hour or so. So we're not talking about deep conversations and stuff like this. Is just a kind of this is more or less like a teaser almost, because the juice is flowing, and then for people who really want to get into it deeper, they can be routed to AAHI.
Well, they need to be able to share their story. Yeah, they need to make sure they share their story. Personally, I think the big topics are schools, churches, Black businesses, and social organizations.
Okay. We have topics if everybody agrees.
Or education, because you've got a built-in group that has a lot of energy when you talk about the big 4.
Well, that's why I said schools.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Say them again, please.
I said schools, businesses, churches, and social groups.
Okay. Is everybody okay with those 4? I know you can't vote. I'm being very careful not to ask you to vote. I'm just saying, is everybody okay?
We're okay. Yes.
I think those 4 groups touch all of our subcommittees.
Right. Exactly. So who would want to be responsible for facilitating the conversations? Would it be appropriate to have a member of AAHI to facilitate each of these, and then for the people who are actually doing the talking, it could be people from the community that you think would be good? Okay.
I think the more the committee does it, the more credibility it gives to the committee. And
just a caution on that. I agree with what everybody said, but I know from my own perspective, there are certain people that you know, friends, church members, whatever, who are much better facilitators than I am. And so you don't want, even though we're on the committee, if we're not the best facilitators, we want to get somebody who can really just, go just like that.
Right.
So I think we also should allow, as you said, other persons to be the facilitators as well, if we have a real good person, a real good choice.
I agree.
Oh, Jane, I heard you say you agree because you don't want to facilitate. See,
No, there are some people who can just, who can just talk and
that's true.
in. Yeah, I really do.
But it's really important that the members of the committee are visible, even if your role is to introduce the segment.
Right.
Or whatever the conversation is going to happen.
I was just going to say, we can introduce, we can encourage, we can do all of that, but then you turn it over to the expert facilitator, and then you don't lose your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Right. I think if we could have if we could recruit one facilitator that would help tie them all together, and then we introduce our own little segment, but you have that same person that maybe keeps the energy flowing. So maybe what we need to do is have another meeting among ourselves to talk about, who would, from my perspective, if it were the Panhandle or the impact of the Panhandle in the community, I could be working on that, but still there may be some other ideas from other members of this committee that would help me. So I think we need to get together again, maybe before our January meeting. And I know there's a lot going on, but
maybe the week before Christmas.
That's good for me.
And maybe if what we could do prior to that week to make it go quickly, maybe we could have an email session and just email back and forth. Well, I suggest Betty X and James R, and this person would be good because of, and then when you actually have the Zoom meeting, it can go much faster because you've already been doing the brainstorming.
If I can interject, again, because your meetings would be considered public meetings, there's certain notice requirements that have to be fulfilled in order for the public to, in theory, be able to weigh in. And so that's the problem of emailing back and forth and handling business in a non-public manner. So that would not be advisable because it very well could run afoul of the public meetings law.
Okay.
Thank you, Keisha.
You're welcome. Sorry.
So
You're right.
So Keisha, how do you plan to prepare for a public meeting if you can't do that?
Well, say if there was I'm not sure what your meeting requirements are because I don't have, what the notice requirements are because I don't have them in front of me. But usually if it's like you have to set it and then post it, I'm just using this as an example, 7 days in advance or 14 days in advance. So I'm not saying that you can't do it. What I'm saying is that when you throw out the dates and times for when you could do something, be mindful that you want to start with whatever the date is and work back.
Okay, we might have lost Keisha.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that you can't do it.
That's
I'm
a
just
good
saying,
point.
So if you know you have to do a 14-day notice or a 7-day notice or a 5-day notice, then keep that in mind when looking at the calendar to pick a meeting date.
But in terms of the emails, Keisha, in terms of communicating by email about different things,
We can't do that.
I know I've had conversation with Angela about this too.
So
we have to be very strict about what we're talking about in email. We can't go into meeting mode, more or less.
Right, that very specifically vague definition of the handling of public business, which could be anything. And it happens when there are a quorum, when there is a quorum present. And so if everyone is copied on that message, the presumption is that they're present for the conducting of business. And so then it becomes an electronic meeting for which there was no public notice given. So you can answer questions. So you could, you know, like administrative type things. And the way that we usually do it is that the email in the to box, and this kind of gets a little bit into the weeds of it, is to one person, and then everyone else is in the BCC line instead of the carbon copy line. And what that does is if someone inadvertently hits reply all, it only goes to the original sender and it doesn't get published out. And that's a way to avoid that presumption of it is an electronic meeting, because all of the people who were on the email string received it, and therefore it is the perception that they had notice of it. So that's one way that you can get around it, is that you're only replying. So if Wanda asked a question, the response would only go back to Wanda, as opposed to it going to one person and then another person responding to that and then another person responding to that, and then that very quickly gives you the appearance of a meeting. And I hope that wasn't too convoluted. But sometimes I find that it's easier to give an example than kind of trying to explain of what the statute requires.
Well, the bottom line is, I think that to err on the side of caution, we can just try to do as much as we can when we get back together in a couple of weeks. We should have enough time to do the meeting notice because it is still a couple of weeks out. And so maybe try to accomplish as much as we can that way. And it require us to do a whole lot via email anyway.
Yes.
So do you have a date for the next meeting?
I will defer to Mr. Larry Bell because it would of course have to be live streamed. So Mr. Bell, do you have any recommendations for dates that week preceding Christmas?
Actually, that's next. Oh, it's 2 weeks out. Okay.
Right.
Week after next.
Right. Okay. So maybe what we can do is come up with a couple of suggested dates. Of course, subject to marketing schedule.
The 16th would be Wednesday.
Yes.
Could we try another day, since we know that has been a problem for some members of the committee, since this is just a call meeting? So maybe that Thursday, the 17th, to see maybe if that way they might be free.
Based off the monthly media calendar, the 17th is better than the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah, our department is open for the 17th that afternoon. That's fine with us. So do you all want to do the 17th at 2 or 3 or whatever?
2 o'clock would be better for me.
Okay. Okay.
2 is good.
Okay.
2 is good for me.
Okay. Mr. Fulton, how's 2 o'clock?
Okay.
Okay. So 2 o'clock on the 17th? Perfect. Okay, that it is. And so we will try to do as much as we can that day. And then the focus for the agenda could be just exclusively preparing for Black History Month. That way we can really have our time together.
Right. I was just going to ask, since that's a call meeting, we don't have to go over minutes and all of that, right? We can just go directly to talking about Black History Month.
Yeah, but you could vote on today's minutes if you wanted to, or you could just wait until January. That would just be a vote on the minutes, because you all couldn't vote on.
We didn't have any action, so yeah.
Right, and you didn't vote on October's minutes yet because you were going to do that,
right?
But you couldn't. So you may want to go ahead and get some of that out of the way, but that's up to you. Okay, so we will plan to meet on the 17th of December and on the 6th of January.
All right.
Okay, and that was all that we had, Madam Vice Chair Penn. That was all we had on the agenda.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. So now do we make a motion to conclude the meeting?
You can't vote. You all just have to agree that you're good to go.
All right. Do we all agree?
I agree.
It's our meeting, handled our business. Then we're formally dismissed.
All right, everyone have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.